I have started making so many games, but until now, I've had nothing to show for it. I've spent almost a decade of my life building this graveyard of dead video game projects scattered across 3 different laptops. But 2 years ago, I said, you know what? No, I'm going to make a game and be proud of it. So I came up with an amazing idea and I started. This time, it was going to be different. It wasn't different. I stopped again. But 5 months ago, I had another burst of inspiration. This time it was different, and I'm going to tell you why. This is how I finished a cozy puzzle game about frogs. This time, I had a cool idea for a game about frogs, but instead of jumping into my sketchbook or prototyping like I've done with every other project, I decided to tackle something I knew absolutely nothing about. Project management. I didn't know how to manage a project, so I watched a YouTube video, and my takeaways were this. Create a to-do list of items, a list of in-progress items, and a list of done items. At the top of the to-do list is everything necessary, like mechanics and playtesting. At the bottom of the to-do list is fancy art, animations, auxiliary mechanics like points or bonuses, things that are not essential to the core of the game. In my old projects, I would spend days making a button the right color. That's not essential. That goes to the bottom of the list. In progress is so that when I sit down at my computer, I immediately remember what the heck I'm working on, and it helps me focus on just one thing at a time. In my old projects, I would work on like 5 different things at a time. I would just go back and forth. It was such a mess. Everything was left in a very unfinished state. Done is so that I can look at it and feel good about how much work I've done. Whenever I worry about how much left I have to do, I scroll down that done list and remember how much my game is really worth. My other project management takeaway: make the smallest game you can imagine. Take that idea and cut it in half. For my game, I promised myself from the beginning there would be 10 levels. And that's it. Finally, I set a vague deadline. I initially planned for only 3 months, so I'd be done by the end of 2022. Of course, it took longer, but that's okay. It was more of a mental deadline to keep me focusing on what matters. By the time I inevitably missed that deadline, the core mechanics were done, and I knew exactly what was left for me to do. All I had to do was make some nice graphics and 10 levels. So then I set the real deadline for March, and I got it done. I'll admit, that whole thing wasn't intentional, but I'm glad I set such a short deadline to start, because it forced me to consider what makes my game functional. If I'm forced to ship a game before it's done, it doesn't have to look pretty, but it better work. In the future, I'm definitely setting a mental deadline, and I'm definitely going to miss that deadline. And that's okay, because I'll have a game with really strong foundations that can be polished later. And the real deadline won't seem so bad. Okay, art. One half of the game development process. For my frog game, I chose the absolute minimal amount of art that I had to draw to make it work. The frogs have 2 frames of animation. The snails have 2 frames of animation. Any motion can be captured in just 2 frames of animation. Now remember what I said earlier about how I would spend days picking the perfect color of a button. I want you to take this to heart. There is no perfect color of a button. More generally, there is no perfect sprite, no perfect icon, no perfect anything for your game. You could make the crappiest sprite for your game, and that sprite will take on its own personality. Anything you make will embody the charm of your game. So When you're making art, don't spend hours fiddling with the colors or the shapes. Set yourself a timer for 15 minutes, and when that timer goes up, move on to something else. Whatever you've made, it's fine for now. Because a game is more than the sum of its parts. And what that means is that all the individual little parts don't have to be that good. I have a lot more to say on this, but for now, I'm going to finish with one last rule. In the vein of Orwell's 6 rules for writing, you can break any of these rules as soon as you stop having fun. I admit, I broke my own rules. I took a break from working on the core mechanics because I really wanted to add this cool sunlight effect. And I did it because it was fun. That's the last rule. Go have fun, you little game dev. Okay. Thank you for listening. I enjoy talking about this stuff, so I'm gonna make more videos, but also just hit me up if you want to talk. My internet name is Radnix. I make games. I have a Twitter and an itch.io page. And see ya.